Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Gota. I'm a chaplain here and would like to welcome you all on behalf of Capital Lakes community and staff. Today, as we gather, I will invite you to take a deep breath that kind of will help us center, connect, and get in touch and be aware of what's going on in our lives. And another breath that can connect us on a different level. Thank you. The words for today is a translation of a German poem titled What It Is. It is nonsense, says reason. It is what it is, says love. It is calamity, says calculation. It is nothing but pain, says fear. It is hopeless, says insight. It is what it is, says love. It is nonsense, says pride. It is foolish, says caution. It is impossible, says experience. It is what it is, says love.
Gouda has asked several of us to say a few words. And this morning, I would speak a few words from our Judeo-Christian tradition. Our memorial services almost always begin with a very brief statement of faith. Life is a mystery, but in life and in death, we belong to God. We always turn to the Hebrew Psalms first, before the promises recorded in the Gospels. The promises God sent into the world through Jesus to challenge the human species, to eventually change the evolutionary trajectory we are on. The comforting 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd," is the one most often read. But today I've chosen part of Psalm 90. From the book Psalms for Praying, a book I use every morning before my silent centering prayer. And I always have too many enclosures in it. Eternal and immortal one, you have been our refuge in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, before you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are the Alpha and the Omega. When our days on earth are ended, you welcome us home to your heart, to the city of light where time is eternal and days are not numbered. You gather those who love you as friends returning from a long journey, giving rest to their souls. You anoint them with the balm of understanding, healing wounds of the past. For our days on earth are a mystery, a searching for you, a yearning for the great mystery to make itself known. Awaken us, O beloved, to honor each day, that we may have a heart of wisdom. Awaken us, O Holy One. Too long have we been asleep. Have mercy on your people. Help us to wait in silence, listening for your word. Strengthen us with courage to face the fears within. And let the grace and gentleness of the Holy Spirit be upon us, guiding our feet upon paths of love. Increase the light within us, God. Hear our prayers. We cling to the truth that no matter what, you love us. Wherever we go, you are there. Wherever we are confused, your Spirit gives wisdom. Wherever we mourn, you promise to comfort. We believe. Help us in our unbelief. Amen.
Oh, I have two readings, one from Mark Twain and one from Jacob Trapp, who I had not heard of before. So from Mark Twain, love came at dawn when all the world was fair, when crimson glories bloom and song were rife. Love came at dawn when hope's wings fanned the air and murmured, I am life. Love came at even when the day was done, when heart and brain were tired and slumber pressed. Love came at even, shut out the sinking sun and whispered, I am rest. And this by Jacob Trapp, maker of the stars, striving through the dust toward new and greater manifestations of spirit. We lift up our hearts this day in praise to the bright shining of the immortal light, for joys that break like sunlight through clouds and overarch the storm with a rainbow of promise, for transmutation of suffering into compassion, and the crown of thorns into a crown of glory. We are conscious this day of more than we can express. Unseen guests are with us, like the music of an invisible choir, deepening our awareness, enriching our communion, and making the hallowed place more beautiful. O thou who art seen in the glory of springtime resurrection, in sunlight, keep answering too deep. Grant
I am standing here this afternoon for our dear friend Alice Lowe. She is conserving her energy and resting at home. She would remind us that we are here at Capitol Lakes on the land of her ancestors. Alice is of the Ojibwe heritage. She wrote this prayer to share for the service of remembrance. O Great Spirit, we honor and respect you, whose universe fills us with wonder. We are humble before you as we ask that you receive our friends who have walked on before us into the spirit world. And we ask that you give them peace. We thank you for their lives, a part of which they spent with us here at our home in Capitol Lakes. We are grateful that they shared their gifts of friendship with even the least of us.
The persons we are remembering and honoring today were our dearly loved family members, our neighbors, our friends. They were givers or sources of love and nurture, guidance, wisdom, and happiness. The light and warmth of their presence enriched our lives. We find greatly comfort knowing that as we remember them and the time spent with them, they continue to give us those gifts and blessings. As I read the name of each person we are remembering today, a family member, friend, or staff member is invited, as you choose, to share with us a characteristic or special memory of that person who is dear to you. The sharing of these special memories help us all to celebrate and remember these significant people in our lives. Nancy Williamson, Heights resident, died peacefully at the age of 85 on December 10th. Nancy was born in 1936 in Middleton, Connecticut as the fourth of 5 girls and graduated from Portland High School in 1954 as the class salutatorian. She played basketball, did cheerleading, and also performed organ in church. She graduated from Wheaton College in 1958, majoring in mathematics and earning Phi Beta Kappa. In 1956, Nancy met Jeff Williamson and they got married on August 23rd, 1958. Nancy and Jeff drove across the country to Palo Alto, where Jeff was attending graduate school at Stanford. There she put Jeff through school working as a computer programmer at Stanford Research Institute, rare for a woman in 1958. Her children always bragged that she programmed nuclear submarines, but recent conversations revealed that she actually modeled explosions, also impressive. Over the next 7 years, she and Jeff had 4 children in 4 cities. After her youngest started preschool, Nancy returned to the workforce as a computer programmer at the Institute for Research on Poverty at UW-Madison. Countless PhD students and faculty reported that they couldn't have completed their research without her. In 1984, she and Jeff moved to the Boston area, and Nancy continued her work as a programmer for the Department of Sociology at Harvard. Upon retirement, they returned to Madison, reconnected with old friends, and continued traveling extensively. Throughout her life, Nancy enjoyed international travel, knitting, needle artwork, and choral and classical music. She loved to watch her kids compete in sports and later to spend time with her grandchildren. Nancy is survived by her husband, Jeff, her sister, Martha, her children, Megan, Hillary, Kirk, and Amy, and 5 grandchildren, along with many nieces and nephews.
Thank you, Tim. Share. George.
Can you hear me? Marilyn and I met Jeff and Nancy about 18 years ago. And it didn't take long, of course, to recognize in Nancy a very sweet and generous person. And these characteristics, of course, were obvious to everyone. Maybe a little less obvious was her public persona, which involved understating things. And 18 years ago, when we met Jeff and Nancy, it was in the office of the realtor who was building Nolan Shore condominiums. And in the course of that session, we were the only 2 couples there. Jeff and I were doing something over with the officials, and Nancy and Marilyn were conversing the way you do with people you're getting acquainted with. And Marilyn just casually said, and what did your husband do? And Nancy said, oh, he was a teacher. And that was it. And another example of understatement was the fact that you could never really pull out of Nancy her very significant contribution to computer programming. She was a very serious contributor to the advance of that whole science in the areas of science that needed it the most, but you could never get her to talk about it. So this was Nancy. I miss her. Marilyn misses her. And I miss her smile. Nancy smiled with her eyes. If you don't believe it, look at the picture in your sheet. Look at those smiling eyes. There was no one quite like her. I miss her.
Thank you, George. Norma?
Yes, thank you, George. Unlike you, I did not know Nancy very long. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of us here who regret that we just had a brief time. We expected more. I do remember a meal we had with Jeff and Nancy just before they were going to leave for the summer to spend in their beloved house or cabin in Maine with all their children and grandchildren, and how happy they both were at the prospect of that. I am thankful for the brief time. We had friends at Nolan Shores who told us to be sure and get to know them as soon as they moved in. And my regret is there wasn't longer to do that. But today I'm glad that we can remember her.
Boris?
I did not know Nancy at all, except through Jeff. I've had the wonderful pleasure to chat with Jeff a couple of occasions. And the thing that stands out in my mind most is a wonderful thing he said to me when he decided to retire. I think he was 72 or something like that. And Nancy asked him, well, with whom would you like to retire? And he seemed a little puzzled. But then he realized that she meant, do you want to retire with those folks at Harvard, or do you want to come back to Madison? So, and the other thing that comes to mind is his co-mastership with Nancy at the Mather House at Harvard, where they had so many joys with the students there. So those, I'm sorry I did not get the chance to meet her, but I know her through Jeff's eyes.
Thank you, Boris. And Jay?
I too did not get to know Nancy well, but I've walked the hall outside the apartment, and I feel like I have a compatriot that I have been cheated out of knowing because of the artwork that came from her needles. If you've not been there, go. It is a stupendous amount of beautiful work through a threaded needle.
Thank you, Jay. We remember Nancy.
James Strauff, age 70, health center resident of Madison, passed away December 12th, 2021. He was born on January 26, 1951 in Milwaukee County, the son of Frederick and Margaret. James grew up in Wauwatosa, graduating from Wauwatosa West in 1969. He attended UW-Madison and graduated from Cal State East Bay with a bachelor's degree in information systems. James worked primarily as a systems analyst for Verex and then American Family Insurance, retiring from the systems programming and resources department in 2014. James is survived by his nephew, Christopher Conrad, and his wife, Mona, cousin Kathleen Harrington and her husband, Paul, and their 3 sons, and many special friends. He was preceded in death by his parents and sister.
I got to know James as he was a health center resident. And I don't know if any of the friends that I invited are joining us. If you are, would you be willing to say anything and share with us? I guess. So James was at the health center on 3rd floor, had complicated health issues. And against any doctor's expectations that gave him a few months, he lived with us for almost 2 years. He was a wonderful human being, interested in really computers and programming. And that was just the half of his life. The second half was his love of music, rock music. He had a band, and those were his best friends that visited him regularly and enjoyed the memories of them playing together in this area and just having a good time. So we remember James.
Genevieve Kobe, 62, health center resident, arrived in our community from Verona. She passed away on Tuesday, December 14th. A family celebration of life will be held at the Delavan Arboretum in the spring.
Genevieve stayed with us 2 days, actually. She was seriously ill on hospice. I met her family at the health center when they were just saying goodbye to her. This is all what I can share with you about Genevieve. We remember Genevieve.
Harry, age 97, a Heights and Terraces resident, Madison, Stoughton. Harry was formerly of Stoughton and passed away on January 10th in the Terraces. He was born in Philadelphia in 1924 and spent his childhood years in Shawano. He recalls a childhood with fond memories of a neighborhood filled with kids and summers spent on the family cottage on Shawano Lake. He graduated from Shawano High School in 1942 and then enrolled in Chicago Technical College to study architecture. Harry, along with several of his friends, decided to enlist in the Navy in 1943 and trained at the U.S. Naval Station in Great Lakes, Illinois. He then served on the destroyer, the USS Parker, during the invasion of Italy. Later in the war, he would be stationed in Plymouth, England, to provide clerical assistance to the naval command post in preparation for the D-Day invasion. After discharge from the service, Harry returned to the U.S. and enrolled in Leighton School of Art in Milwaukee. It was while at Leighton he met the love of his life, Annette Peterson. Harry and Annette were married in 1947 in Dubuque, Iowa. They enjoyed 64 years of marriage. They were blessed with 3 daughters, Rebecca, Martha, and Carla. Later in life, his grandchildren became a great source of pride for him as he found much pleasure in visiting them. Harry was a loving and caring husband, father, and grandfather. The Hayters moved to Stoughton in 1955, where Harry managed Dairy Fresh, which distributed dairy products throughout Wisconsin and Illinois. As time went by, Harry returned to his true interest of architecture and construction. He served as president of Monroe Construction Company and engaged in the design and construction of residential and commercial projects. Later in his career, Harry served as building inspector for the city of Sun Prairie. He believed that buildings were a reflection of a community and its residents. Throughout his life, Harry kept his interest and curiosity about architecture by visiting historical buildings and through his reading and collecting of architectural books.
I believe Harry's daughter is with us on Zoom, so Um, okay. Yeah, Carla, hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah. I don't know if you're able to hear me. I am in Oak Park, Illinois, watching this service. I
yes,
wasn't
we can see you.
anticipating to speak, so I just want to say that I really appreciate the staff at Capitol Lakes for their care of my father and for just providing a good living environment for him. I especially enjoyed myself coming up to see my dad many times and spending hours with him at Capitol Lakes, and he enjoyed just watching people and looking at the lake and you know, visiting with people. And I just want to thank the staff for providing such a great living arrangement for the residents. And my dad was very loving. Thank you.
Carla, this is Sally Davis. I saw you many times when you and your husband came to be with Harry. And you are a loving, caring daughter that I know he just treasured. But my relationship with Harry was a very strange one. I come from a small town in northern Wisconsin, at most 350 people. And I grew up there. And I will correct Tim's pronunciation of Shawano is Shawano.
That's right.
So Harry, of course, grew up in Shawano. Well, I grew up 13 miles away in this little town. And when we moved in, he came up to me and said, I know where you lived. And I went, oh, okay. And then he described being in Shawano as a child and enjoying that community so much. And he also pointed out to me that I was close to the Muncie Stockbridge Indian Reservation and the, can't think of the other reservation now, Menominee. And did I ever go there? Did I ever see some of the Indian art or anything to do with their culture? And my answer was, no, I didn't. Children aren't terribly interested in things like that. And if they don't have the opportunity, they don't do it. But I guess I miss most, he always smiled, and when he said hello, and he had a twinkle in his eye, and he always said, I know where you came from.
When Harry moved to the terraces, I could see directly into his apartment from my apartment. And one of the first things that moved in was the drafting board. And more than once, I saw him sitting at that drafting board in the evening and working at it. I did say to one of his caregivers, am I going to have to be a little more careful now that Harry's living directly across the courtyard from me? And she assured me that he couldn't see more than 4 feet in front of his face. And so perhaps I didn't have to be quite so careful.
Mary France.
Well, Harry spent some time in Monroe, as you heard in this. And when we moved in here 10 years ago, he was very quick to inform us that he was from Monroe too, although we had lived there for 60 years and he had lived there a rather relatively brief time. But he'd always say, how are things in Monroe? I think he had a great sense of place, as Sally points out. And he was always very friendly. And John was only in the terraces for a few weeks, but I would see Harry sitting in the hallway there, and he always gave me a big smile. How are things in Monroe?
Harry liked to talk business and was always on me about something, so he can be on me about butchering the name of his hometown as well.
We remember here.
Margie Forniker, health center resident, moved to our community from Beloit. Margie was born in Durand, Illinois in 1929. She grew up on her family's farm where she loved helping her mom and dad with all that farm life entails. She was proud to be a wholesome farm gal when she united in marriage to Charles Forniker in 1958. Her large and in charge way of life was quite contagious and infectious to everyone who was lucky enough to know and love her. The simple pleasures in life brought great joy to Margie. She was a great hard worker who was extremely independent and proud. She bought her first car in her early 20s, and with her own money, she made while employed in Rockford. She enjoyed many forms of music and could pick up almost any instrument to play by ear, specifically her violin. Her joy for music continued throughout her life and was passed to her children, who also played violin. She traveled extensively around the United States and abroad with her mother, husband, and children. Later in life, she found a liking for cats and loved them so much as they brought a simple and calming joy to her and Charles.
Thank you. I suspect that Jeannie is there, or some of her family members.
Hello?
Go ahead, Gene.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, also that I really appreciate the care that she received at Capitol Lakes I think she was there about 5 years. Everyone took such good care of her. One thing I just want to stress is for anyone that knew her, the one thing I think that you would hear everyone talk about was how she liked to make people laugh. And she was always kind of the life of the party. And growing up, it was kind of refreshing to have a mother that was like that, because I know I had a lot of friends whose parents were very kind of stern and strict. And even though, she made us stay in our place, but it was really fun growing up and having such, a mother with such a good sense of humor. As was stated in the previous words, she loved traveling. She saved her money. Her sisters all, when they got out of high school, pretty much got married and started a family. And she said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go work at a factory. And she did that. And she wanted to save money to buy a car. That was her big thing in life. And it didn't make sense to me until many years later. I realized why that car was so important to her. She had grown up on a small farm in Northern Illinois, which she just loved that life. But she was growing up, she always said she was a Depression year baby because she was born in 29. But she wanted to, she was listening to the radio and starting to see television when it first came out. And she started seeing these places out west that she really wanted to see if they really were there. And so that's why she wanted her car, because she, at the age of 21, took her vacation from her job and told her parents that she was going to take a driving trip out west because she wanted to see Mount Rushmore and the Badlands and these other places that she'd heard about. And of course, my grandmother, said, well, you're only 21 years old. you're a woman, you can't drive that far by yourself. And it's just, it's not heard of at that time. But she was determined, and my grandmother and her aunt decided to go with her. And when they came back, it really opened their eyes up too, because they had never lived or moved farther than 25 miles from where they were born. So, and she made sure that when we were growing up too, we went on family vacations starting when I was very young, all over the country. And she even traveled with me to visit the Vatican in, I think it was 1986, which she had a big fear of flying, but she did go because of her love for travel. So that's about all I want to say. I just, again, want to just appreciate everything that, Capitol Lakes did for her over the last 5 years. I really appreciated all of the care that she received. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Eugene, it was nice to meet you and get to know your mother as well. And as you said, she is really a joyful person. She laughed, I can tell, to the last day of her life. And we miss her greatly. Well, we remember Margie. Today, we're also here to acknowledge the first anniversary of death of Jeannie Silverberg. On this day, a year ago, she died, and we remembered her last summer. And Joe went today to the graveyard and did the visitation and asked to share this information with the community. So just be mindful of her death a year ago. Anyone else we would like to remember? Most of us think of what's happening in the world and how difficult is this time in Ukraine, and innocent people dying there too. And it's thousands and thousands of people dying from COVID. So let's pause again for a moment and center ourselves and offer our best intention to this world, and also support those who grieve the loss. We remember Jeannie Silverberg and all the people who are on our mind.
Is this on? The Mourners Kaddish, the Jewish prayer of remembrance for mourners, was actually written about 2 centuries after Jesus' death, but was built on a lot of prayers from the temple at the time of his life, and therefore it's appropriate, I think, and it's written in Aramaic, which was the common language of the time. And it's a prayer that is entirely dedicated to the glory of God. And therefore, it's appropriate for every one of us in our prayers. I'm going to read it in English and then read it in Hebrew. And it's customary in Jewish tradition that anybody in the congregation who is wishing to remember a particular person who's died at this time of year, in any generation at any time, but at this time of year, to say that name of the person out loud if you would like to remember that person. And therefore, I'm going to do something which is traditional in a Jewish synagogue, which is to have the person who's going to be saying the prayer turn to people in the congregation right across very slowly. And if you wish to pay attention to my eyes, you may say the name of a person, whoever it is who has died, who you would like to remember at this moment as we give prayer to God about the glory of God. And at this time, all of us are, I think, thinking very deeply, not only about our own loved ones, but those loved ones of others in Ukraine who have been killed by the incredible war that is going on at the moment. And I think we all of us understand deep down that that war may in fact turn into a war that will affect us as well as the people now in Ukraine. And so I feel very strongly that all of us will be in some way involved with the prayer at this time, not only for the mourning of our loved ones, but of those of other people in other places at this time. So I will just look around the room, and if there is somebody you would like to remember at this moment, then when we read the prayer and you are saying Amen at the end of each paragraph, we will be thinking about that individual. Say it out loud.
Rose Waxler. Linda Davis. Nancy Ann Penfield.
Galen Melling. My mom, Nancy.
And my brother, Ronnie Jacobs, who died 4 years ago, this time of the year. I'm going to read the prayer now in English. And at the end of the paragraphs, I will say, and let us say, and the response is Amen. May God's name be exalted and hallowed throughout the world that God created as is his wish. May God's sovereignty soon be accepted during our life and the life of all Israel and all humankind. And let us say, Amen. May God's great name be praised throughout all time, glorified and celebrated, lauded and worshipped, exalted and honored,
Extolled and acclaimed may the Holy One be, praised beyond all song and psalm, beyond all tributes that mortals can utter. And let us say, Amen. Let there be abundant peace from heaven with life's goodness for us all, for all Israel and all humankind. And let us say, Amen. May the one who brings peace to his universe bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity. And let us say, Amen. Yit Gadal, and please join in if you wish to. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Kirute, V'yamlik Malchute, B'chaye Chon of Yume Chon, U'v'chaye de Kol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala U'vizman Kari V'imaru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mavorach Leolam Alamei Alamaya. Yit Barak V'yishtabach V'yit Pa'ar V'yit Raman V'yit Naseh V'yit Halal V'yit Halal V'halal Shemei Dekudasha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tush B'chata V'nechamata Damiran B'alma V'yimaru. Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'yimaru. Amen. Ose Shalom B'mrumov. Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'yimaru. Amen.
So before we depart and before we hear Frances Karp piece that she prepared for postlude, I want to offer a benediction for all of us. We'll start saying that, dear friends, our life is short and precious, and we do not have too much time to bring the joy of those who live with us. So be swift to love and may haste to be kind, and may the blessing of the one or many who created us, loves us, and journeys with us be upon us and our loved ones forevermore. Amen.